Hey everyone, Forrest here with Rocky Mountain School of Photography, and today we're going to talk about shooting and editing photos in the snow. Let's dive in. So the first thing that we need to understand is exposing images in the snow can be very challenging. Your meter is going to have a really hard time figuring out what's going on, and if you're using a setting like program or aperture priority or shutter priority, you're going to have a really hard time getting your meter to work properly. Now the first thing that I would recommend is understanding f-stops, shutter speeds, ISOs. We actually have a great online class that you guys can check out down in the description to get started with that, as well as other videos here on YouTube. But the key takeaway is your meter is going to try to make the snow 18% gray. Now, what is 18% gray? Well, 18% gray is also known as middle gray. It is the halfway point between white and black, and it's what your camera's meter is calibrated to try to make the world look like. What that means is when your camera's meter sees all of the bright snow in the wintertime, it's gonna try to darken that snow down and make it gray. In fact, you can go try this. Put your camera on any sort of automatic mode, go take a photo in the snow, and I bet you that your image will be too dark. So how do we override this? Well, when we're in the field, what we're gonna do is we're gonna be sure that we are on the spot metering mode. Now, your camera has a lot of different metering modes. Again, we have classes on this if this interests you, but the spot metering mode is gonna tell the camera to only read the light from the center of your viewfinder when you're looking through the camera. And that gives us a lot of precision on where we want to read the light from in our scene. The other thing that we're gonna wanna make sure we do is put our camera on manual mode. We don't want the camera to be making any sort of decisions for us. Now from there, we're gonna point our camera out into the scene. We're gonna take our spot meter and put it over some snow somewhere in the frame. Honestly, if it's pretty uniform lighting, there's not a lot of highlights and shadows, you can point at any snow out there if it's, say, a cloudy day. If it's a little bit more of a dappled light situation with some highlights and some shadows, you're gonna wanna point your meter at some snow that's either in the sun or in the shade, depending on whether your subject is in the sun or in the shade. And that can make a huge difference actually. Like light variability and differences between sunny areas and shady areas can have a huge effect on your images. So be careful here. But put your meter over those areas, and what you're gonna wanna do is adjust either your shutter speed or your ISO or your aperture until that little meter needle is pointing at +2. Now, this is your camera yelling at you, right? That's like not what we've been taught for years. It's saying, hey, this is too bright. But the key is we want the image to be brighter than what the camera thinks it should be. Again, the camera's trying to make things 18% gray or halfway between white and black. And we're telling the camera, hey, no, this area that I'm pointing my meter at, this white snow, we want it to go to +2, to brighter than what you think is correct. If you take the photo, it should look perfect. Now, how do we check this? Well, the key to checking it is gonna be looking at your histogram. So what is a histogram? Well, a histogram is a graph of all of the tones in your image. And you can see one in your camera by going to the playback mode and then either tapping display or info, a little different manufacturer to manufacturer, but you should be able to bring up this little graph. And what we're looking at specifically in the wintertime is the right side of that graph. We want a big spike of highlight tones, that's your snow, to be on the right side of the histogram, but not touching the side. If it's touching the side, it's doing what's called clipping. It means we're losing information in our highlights, and that's not a great thing. Instead, we want it as bright as it can be without clipping that information. So we're trying to get that graph as far over to the right side, assuming that there's snow in your picture, without it cutting off. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna give us the greatest ability to edit those photos when we get them into Lightroom or Capture One or whatever program you happen to be using. So now that we've captured the correct exposure, we've verified with the histogram that it is correct, and we've made any changes down the line or tweaks if things are too bright or too dark, we're left with hopefully a well-exposed set of images. You shouldn't need to change your exposure for the rest of the shoot, assuming that the light isn't changing. So if it's a cloudy day and it's the middle of the day, you should be able to shoot for another couple hours without any sort of changes to your exposure. It should be able to keep things perfect. Now, if your subject's moving moving from the sun to the shade, back and forth. You're gonna need to re-expose depending on what light's falling on your subject. But generally in the winter, at least here in Montana, it's usually pretty consistent lighting throughout the day. So we'll be able to set that once and then forget about it through the rest of the shoot. Everyone, I hope you liked this video. If you did, I would really appreciate you dropping a like down below. Definitely leave a comment if you have any sort of questions, and hit subscribe to stay updated with future videos. We are almost to 100,000 subscribers, and I am so excited to hit that goal. So help me hit that if you would. I would really appreciate it. Thanks everybody, and I'll catch you in the next one.